yields back, and I recognize the ranking member, Mr. Ivey, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want a couple of follow-up points from our previous panel. I did want to say we had a number of questions addressing, or actually statements suggesting that the social media platforms were coerced by the government and that they didn't have the ability to resist government requests or flagging of information. And I did want to reiterate the point that I made in my opening statement about how these social media platforms have dealt with this. So a post flagged by the EIP, Election Integrity Partnership, platforms took action on 35%. 21% of those were labeled, 13% were removed, and 1 were left soft blocked, which I believe means that they don't permit the algorithm to, allow it to go viral. No action was taken on 65% of these interactions. So we might disagree about, whether they should be doing this or not, but I don't think Elon Musk has had any trouble resisting or disagreeing with the Biden administration. And my recollection from when I worked with Microsoft was that they didn't have trouble disagreeing with the government at the time either. So with respect to the issue about rumor control and disinformation tactics, Ms. Harrington, I wanted to ask you to elaborate a little bit on that. What does that mean? What kinds of activities are you taking, or is your entity taking, with respect to those kinds of situations?
Representative, so we have a rumor control page set up which helps to amplify election official voices. So the state and locals that are running the elections, we have a number of rumor narratives and the reality, providing factual information. Again, that can be found transparently on our website. We work closely with state and local election officials, and we have that all cross-linked to, for example, the National Association Secretary of States, also the National Association of State Election Director websites, and there are a number of other sources so that Americans can read that information and make their own decisions about the facts surrounding how election administration works. So that is one mechanism that we have where we amplify election official voices and put out actual information to educate and ensure that we are putting out literacy information to the American people to make good decisions.
All right, so in Maryland, I believe we had a misinformation scenario that spread about the last day to request a mail-in ballot and about the process of voting in person. Are those the types of scenarios that you're referencing, or would that be addressed by a different mechanism?
Representative, we don't go into specific detail around the rules for each specific jurisdiction, if you will, but we have more broad narratives that are corrected on there. As you know, elections are decentralized and each state has their own specific rules and requirements that govern how they run their elections. So we don't get into that level of granularity, but more broad narratives.
We'll give me an example of a scenario where you would have gotten involved.
So, for example, we have an entry on Rumor vs. Reality that says voting system hardware and software undergo testing from federal, state, and/or election authorities. And the rumor on that is that voting system software is not at all reviewed or tested, period. So that would be an example of an entry, broad entry.
All right, and then what would you do to address that? How did you, or if that's actual, how did you respond?
That's an actual listing on the Rumor vs. Reality webpage. So I'm just demonstrating the broad narratives that we try to correct. We have other entries on there, such as voters are protected by state and federal law from threats or intimidations at polls. including from election observers. So that's another reality that we have on there. And the rumor associated with that reality is observers in polling places are permitted to intimidate voters, campaign, and or interfere with voting. So you could see their broad narratives that we just put out to educate, but we don't get into the granularity of specific jurisdictions per your question.
All right, well, I see my time has expired, so I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and the chair now recognizes